So, in 2 minutes, hopefully, Gavin should be online as well.
Okay. Did
So,
he have problems, technical problems, or?
it seems to me that, in a way, he forgot what time it is.
Okay. Yeah, it's so weird because I have a
Ah,
lot of
we have Sten
meetings
here
that.
now.
Hello, I
Hello.
hope everything is okay and you can go live, right?
We are waiting for Gav. I just called him, and hopefully, in a moment, he will be online as well. I think he a little bit like
Okay,
forgot what the
super.
time was.
It's always with the Brits. The Brits always forget the time because it's just like one
It's
hour
always the
off.
Brits. It's
Yeah.
always the Brits.
Yeah, yeah,
No, I
yeah.
think it's
Well, Johannes, look,
nee, Gavin is here.
basically, I mean, if it doesn't answer.
Oh, hello. Can you hear us? Can
Hello?
you see us?
Hello? I can hear you. I
You
can't
can't
see you.
see me. That's good.
And I can hear you too. That was the same yesterday when I did my call. So I think we will start seeing each other when the live stream starts. Then we'll
Exactly.
have visuals. Yeah, but not in
Okay.
the not in
Ah,
the lead-in time. Oh, yeah, I
Yeah,
see you.
sure.
Excellent. Good, good. Perfect.
Nice hat.
Hey,
so we're all safe and sound. In some minutes we will go live. So if at one point you will not see your faces anymore on the screen, but at the moment you will see your faces, you can start talking because the whole world is seeing you.
Oh, do we not? Are we
Okay, cool,
early?
gentlemen, enjoy the talk.
Yep.
Sorry, what time is this starting?
in 4 minutes.
It's
All right, okay, cool. I had that down as, yeah, I've got sent different times. That's okay, though. Hold on a sec. A bit. I'm about to start this thing, and all of a
Ordnung muss sein.
Ja. Zweite Ordnung muss sein.
Am I okay without headphones? I'm not too echoey, am I? Am I
Yeah,
okay?
you're very good. The
Okay,
light
cool.
is good, the sound is good, all good.
Sound
Okay.
is good. Yeah, yeah. Can hear you fine.
All right. Sorry, I look a bit scruffy. I've just been lifting a load of rocks in the garden.
You can talk with each other right now, but I will not be able to talk with you because we're going live in a moment.
Okay. Estonia. My name is Johannes. I'm sitting in Vienna, Austria, and it's great to have our special guest, Gavin Rothery, here from the UK, as far as I can tell.
Yes, here in London. Hello.
You're in London. Perfect, perfect. One plague city to another plague city. You know, like Vienna, London, all plaguey stuff.
Nobody go outside ever.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's wonderful to see you. It's wonderful to see that the stream is working. It's not one of the old seance, like usually, like if you do Zoom calls and live conferencing, it's almost like talking to ghosts, you know, like a seance. Can you hear me? Where are they? Please knock if you can hear me, please. But it seems to work. Stable stream. So just like a brief introduction, my name is Johannes. I was invited by the B3 Biennale to host a couple of talks. It's a big honor to be able to talk to Gavin today. So my background, I was born in the 70s and grew up a classic nerd in a little Austrian town in the 1980s. Read a lot of cyberpunk, you know, like William Gibson. Started to be a huge fan of Ian M. Banks and that kind of stuff. Ursula K. Le Guin, and because I was so much interested in sci-fi and cyberpunk literature, actually I grew into being a very political person. And from being a cyberpunk kid, I turned into being a punk teenager, got involved in lots of like activism stuff, Antifa, etc., 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 and also started an art and technology and activity activism group called Monochrome. I've been doing that for like 30 years now. I'm also doing films. Just a couple of years ago, I did a documentary about nerd culture where I did a road trip through the US trying to talk to different nerds from different backgrounds about their upbringing as nerds. And the changing of the terms of nerd and what does it mean to be a nerd in the in the 21st century compared to the 1980s and stuff like that. So I've been doing lots of different projects, but also of course many of them somehow related also to science fiction and fantasy, and that's why of course it's great to be able to talk to Gavin today. Just a brief introduction about him. Gavin was an illustrator and graphics designer, wanted to create comics. Today he is a writer and director. He worked as a concept artist in the games industry, but also in movies. For example, Moon, a couple of years ago, actually almost 10 years ago. It's like time flies by. And in the year 2020, our favorite year of plagues in this century, he's releasing at the moment his first feature film called Archive. And of course, Archive will be one of the main talking points in our conversation today, but of course, not only. So big applause. Thank you for thank you for being here, and thanks for having our little live stream today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is cool.
Yeah, so it was great actually being able to hand over the award to you on Friday. We didn't really see each other, and it was a very interesting conversation because I had to hold a microphone to a cell phone to be able to talk to you on stage in Frankfurt a couple of days ago. But it's good being able to see you now. So what I would really like to start with is that I assume that you were interested in science fiction and science fiction culture and nerd culture for a long time. So how did you grow up, and how did you, let's talk a little bit about nostalgia and where you come from, being interested in sci-fi still today and making sci-fi movies?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was my dad. I mean, when I was very, very young, we used to have this like little bookshelf in my house. And my dad worked on oil tankers, and he used to travel all around the world. So he'd be at home for a few months, and he'd be away for a few months. And he used to just get through paperback books. He used to read lots and lots of books. And when I was a really, really little kid, I mean, I must have been, it's like earliest memories, I must have been 3 or 4 years old. I had this bookshelf, and he'd come back from the boat, and he'd always leave a load of books there and bring a bunch of books back. And he always brought his favourite books back, because my dad was a huge sci-fi fan. And he'd put the books on the bookcase, and I used to just pull the books off the bookcase and just look at the covers, because he just had all this fantastic art from all these wonderful illustrators from like the 60s and 70s and the 80s. And, people like Peter Elson and Chris Voss and like these kind of illustrators. And I used to look at these. I used to just be completely like spellbound by these images. And I wasn't old enough to read the books, but I used to just look at the pictures and sort of make up my own stories, like just wonder what was going on. Like when I was a little kid, I couldn't wait to read because I wanted to know what was in these books. And now, I understand that the covers that I was looking at were things like, Dune and, Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy and, things like the Stainless Steel Rat books and all those kind of things. So I know what they all are now, but back when I was a kid, I've got this kind of burned in memory of this stuff. It's like some of my earliest memories, and it's been a real joy, as I've gotten older and I've read these books and kind of come to understand what these things really were. And the cool thing was, when I was a kid and you look at these pictures, I had all these ideas in my head. Some of it was like actually quite close to what I was reading in the books. I guess that's just testament to the illustrators. But that was the first thing that really got me into it, I think. I grew up in Yorkshire in North England in the late 70s. I was born in 73. So my very early childhood memories are the kind of back end of the 1970s. And there was nothing going on there at the time in Yorkshire, like sci-fi wise. There's just nothing there. Star Wars came out when I was like nearly 4. I was still 3 when Star Wars came out, and that blew my mind. I can remember being taken to see Star Wars, and that was just burned on my mind. And then when I was 6, something really significant happened when I was 6 years old. And my dad, again, we were at home, and I was outside playing in the garden, and he pulled me inside, and he was like, "Come on, you got to watch this thing on television." And he sat me down, and we watched a film called Silent Running. And I was 6, and we watched it, and it just blew my mind. Silent Running with the gardener robots. They're actually, where are they? We've actually got Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
Excellent. No, it's one of my favorite films ever. I mean, you can debate the political message is a bit woo-woo, I have to say, but it's a brilliant film still. I like in my.
It's credited for being a film about the environmental movement. I mean, we've got Joan Baez singing protest songs on the soundtrack. I mean, when I was a kid, like I didn't know what any of that stuff was. I just got this sad story about the last garden in a dome in space, and this guy trying to protect it, and with his little robot helpers, and it just stayed with me. It haunted me. That film haunted me. Also, being a kid, I thought those robots were real. I had no idea how they were done. I mean, to be credit to Douglas Trumbull, who wrote and directed and designed all this stuff. I didn't find out how those robots had been done until, just every now and again when the internet started up. That was when I found out, like, you're starting to get information from the internet, like the early internet. That was when I kind of found out about this stuff properly and realized that each one of those robots actually had an amputee inside walking on their hands. I just thought that was incredible. Like the way that whole thing I couldn't see it. I couldn't see a person walking on their hands inside those costumes. And it's like a magic trick. It sounds a little bit silly when you know how it's done, because when you know it's done and you can't see anything else then because you know what it is. But when you don't know what it is, I couldn't see it. I just had no idea how on earth they'd pulled that off. And also around the same period, there was things a bit later. There's things going on with like the Battlestar Galactica television show in the 80s. They used a chimpanzee in a full-on costume to play the robot Daggett. So I knew about that before. So I knew that some people were doing really strange things to bring kind of robots to the screen with an unusual physicality. But I didn't clock that one at all. Still blows my mind a little bit thinking about it, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Silent Running is really an excellent example of like also realistic design of spacecraft. And I still remember they had this big American Airlines logos on the side of the freighters. and that was just like probably the best product placement buck ever spent, at least for me, because I still remember the logo on the side of the spacecraft. Of course, way later, I realized that one of the central plot elements is the guy killing his astronaut friends with a spade, which is actually kind of gruesome, I have to say, but still. But yeah, so how did you then actually become a graphic designer, or like what was the period of time, or what did you actually do to become someone who suddenly is really creating spacecraft for creative products like computer games or films?
There was three things that combined to make this happen. This was me at school, 14, 15 years old. The first thing was I was reading 2000 AD. If you know 2000 AD, it's a comic in the UK which was really popular around that time, featuring characters like Judge Dredd, Strontium Dog, Rogue Trooper, Nemesis the Warlock, ABC Warriors, Slain. It was huge when I was a kid, so I was big into 2000 AD. So every Saturday I would get a copy of 2000 AD, and inside it would have usually 5 stories, I think it was. It would have 8 pages of each story, and each one was different writer, different artist, usually different writers, and that whole thing just blew my mind. It was such a bounty of riches. After you've been reading 2000 AD for a while as a kid, you develop quite a pile of them in your bedroom. And there's just so much reread value. You'd reread them all the time. And as the stories grew and got bigger, because they were all in episodes, some of these stories, like the Apocalypse War, ran for something like 2 years or something. It ran for a really long time. So when you finished it, you could reread the whole thing in one go. And now we have graphic novels where they've all been collected and you can read it in one book. Back then, you just had a pile of comics and you just flick to the middle and read Judge Dredd. And it was just amazing. So 2000 AD blew my mind. I always wanted to draw. I just wanted to draw Dredd and Strontium Dog. That was my thing. And I was at school in Yorkshire, and all the advice I was getting from the teachers. This is where the second part comes in, which is me being stubborn. The nearest employers were the Halifax Building Society. It's like a huge financial organisation. Was in Halifax, which was a next door town, and they sucked up anybody that was good at maths or had some aptitude at school. Halifax Building Society just got hold of them and brought them inside, and everybody worked for the Halifax Building Society. So at the school, the tutors at school that were trying to steer your career were always just like, why don't you go and work at the Halifax Building Society? Halifax Building Society is nice. Get a good job at the Halifax Building Society. And I was just like, I can't do that. It'll drive me crazy. I've got to try and draw comics. And so, I was saying, well, I want to draw for 2000 AD. And the response I just got every time this came up was, so hard being an artist. Oh, so many people try. You're just going to fail. Don't worry about that. Don't try too hard. Just get a job at the Halifax Building Society. Or the other one, which is where the third thing comes in, was I was in the Air Cadets and I wanted to be a pilot. And so I was in the Air Cadets for like 4 or 5 years, made some really great friends, did a ton of flying, got glider's wings, did all kinds of stuff, was on track towards a pilot's license. Really cool. Like I was a kid at school and I'm getting free flying lessons because I'm in the Air Cadets. Absolutely brilliant. And so, the other thing was like, hey, careers wise, go in the RAF, you're in the cadets, you're all lined up for it. All you got to do is do your exams, and then just, you're straight in there. You've done well in the Air Cadets, you'll be fine in the Air Force, just go do that. But then the third thing came in, which was, I was like 15, 16, and I'm starting to sort of develop my own sense of transforming into an adult. And it occurred to me that if I was going to be a pilot, I was going to be flying jets. That's cool. And I was going to be dropping bombs on people, which, that can be cool, can not be cool. There are a lot of people I'd probably be fine dropping bombs on, but I'd need to know who they were and why I was dropping the bombs. And that's not what a career in the military is about. You're not asking those kind of questions. You're in the plane dropping the bombs no matter what. And that gave me pause for thought. I didn't really feel okay just dropping bombs on anybody just because somebody told me to. Like, I need to know more about it before I'm dropping bombs. So that kind of turned me away from the RAF. And that then I was like, well, this is it. I'm just going to do comics. So those three things combined, it was me not believing my career teachers, because they were saying it's too hard to be a comic artist. And yet every Saturday I'm reading 2000 AD. And it's full of all these different artists. Like, they've cracked it. Like, it's possible. So there was that. There was not being prepared to work in a building society. I mean, I could have probably had quite a nice life in Halifax building society, but I just had to draw. It was just inside me. I had to do it. And not being okay about killing random people just because someone tells me to.
Wonderful. The Halifax Building Society. It sounds like one of these like evil mega corporations, like OCP or something like that. The Halifax Building Society.
Corporation.
You
exactly
don't know
what I'm joking.
Well, yes. Okay. So, and then you were already on track, or did something try to veer you off of your career into creativity?
Everybody tried to stop me from doing it. Honestly, it's ridiculous. I mean, I can't blame them at the time. Actually, do you know what? Not everybody did. My mum and dad were super cool. They saved me because everybody else, all the professional people, were like, "No, don't do that, don't do that." And I just ignored them really. I used to draw all the time, so I always had like a stack of drawings and paintings and like constantly. And as my education progressed, I went from having a GCSE portfolio to an A-level portfolio. That got me into an art college. That got me onto a degree. And then before you know it, I've got a portfolio which is getting me work. So I just kept drawing and painting, and I just kind of outgrew the advice really.
Perfect. What can I say? I think it was the right choice.
Yeah, I can't complain.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's so bad that we don't have too much time to talk, because it would be super to be able to really follow up all the different steps, because it's always great to follow a career and just like try to find out how that works. But I mean, there are a couple.
Sorry, I can do you a quick career path. I can do you a quick career path.
Please.
Stop me. Okay, so I'll go really quick. So went through school, blah, 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 graduated with a degree in graphic design, specializing in illustration, 1996. Wanted to draw comics. Amazing guy I met at a comic convention whilst I was at university. Took my portfolio down. A chap called Alan Grant, one of the creators of 2000 AD, a writer, took me under his wing. He was going to get me a Batman story. He was working with, was it Vertigo at the time? Or Dark Horse? I think it was one of those two. He had 3 new artists he was bringing under his wing. I was like one of them. I was going to do Batman. I was straight out of university. I had a Batman book in front of me. I was like, cracked it. So what happened was new editors came in. They rotated. All the projects on the desk just went in the bin. All Alan's projects got binned. He basically just said, look, I'm never working with you guys again. Parted way. My Batman books in the bin. All gone, and I've just come out of university thinking I'm going to be drawing Batman, to all of a sudden, nope, still unemployed. So around that time, Sony launched PlayStation 1, heavy marketing, made games very cool, games in nightclubs with soundtracks, all this stuff's going on, games are cool. Loads of game studios pop up, and the same skills that I'd been developing to draw 2000 AD were applicable to computer games, but I had no idea how to use a computer. So I applied for a job with my drawing portfolio, got hired, and just learned how to use a computer. I just told them, like, I'm dead keen. I don't know how to use them, but I'm keen. But nobody knew how to use them back then, because you couldn't go to university and learn 3D or any of that stuff back then. Everybody was learning on the job. There was no schools to teach you anything. So yeah, I just got a job, started designing spaceships, funnily enough. Taught myself how to use 3D. That then led me from job to job to job, because a lot of these studios would only be around for a year or so, because they were all run by young, inexperienced guys. They'd get a game deal, they'd survive for a year, maybe get one game out, then they'd collapse. Everybody would scatter, get a job at a new place, same thing happens, rinse and repeat that for a few years. And before you know it, you've worked at 5 or 6 studios, you've met loads of friends, they've all worked at loads of different studios, and every time you're going out, you're hanging out with them and their new friends at their new studios. Before you know it, you know everybody in London. Studios in London, you know who everybody is. So when a studio goes down, you're calling everybody up, seeing if they need any artists, and it became quite easy to get jobs. So even though it was very fragile and studios were collapsing all the time, I never had a problem getting work, which was kind of weird, because you're kind of taught that when you're in a career where the company's going to go down, quite possibly going to go down. So you're supposed to feel scared about that, but it was always quite kind of exciting because it was like, oh, if the company goes down, I can go get you can work with so and so, and go and do that job over there. That game looks like it's cool. I can get on that one. So there's a lot of that going on. So it's really fun. Then I worked at a place called Elixir Studios where I met my chum Duncan Jones. He just graduated from film school. I didn't know who his dad was for like a year after I met him. It was just Duncan that I worked with. He wanted to be a writer. I was into all the art stuff. I wanted to do VFX and level up because I was working in games art, and especially back then in the late 90s, you're doing 200 polygon characters. Like we were working in the shallow end of what the 3D software was capable of, which was kind of cool because the machines were much slower back then anyway. But now, when you work on a game now, you've just got all the bells and whistles to play with. But back in the day, like if you're working in games like 20, 25 years ago, it was like there's no power there at all. It was like just on the cusp of graphics cards being a thing. So let's see. Yeah, so me and Duncan just became friends. We liked the same stuff. We both like sci-fi, both like 2000 AD. And he ended up moving into my house that I was renting. And he was just wanting to make films. So we ended up just working together on stuff. So we just both had our computers set up in the lounge on desks next to each other. And we just work on everything together. So he was doing like pitch commercials. It was like a new world for me. He was doing like pitch commercials and like pitches for promo videos and stuff. And everything he did, he wanted to do like sci-fi stuff usually. So he'd be like, hey, Gav, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you sort me out? Can you do me a couple of Blade Runner city shots and this kind of stuff? I'd be like, yeah, of course I can, yeah. So I'd be doing that stuff and we'd be pitching stuff. And it was really slow to get going because at first nothing was happening. And eventually we got a couple of things made and we started doing pitch test commercials and we started doing real commercials. And then we started making like, £200,000 beer commercials for television and things like that. And it all kind of rose. And then eventually, after 10 years of trying, we got to make the film that we always talked about making, which ended up being Moon. So that was just me and him working that whole thing came from just me and him at home, just trying to get a film made, talking about what it could be, what could be in it, And yeah, so I ended up working on Moon. So I designed Moon. I was, like helping him work the story out and stuff, like making sure it had that sort of sci-fi cred, like the silent running vibe that you can feel in Moon. That was me sort of trying to put my favorite films into the kind of fabric of Moon, like a bit of silent running, a bit of Outland, a bit of Alien. And so, yeah, I was designing Moon. I did all the graphic design, did all the motion graphics, did supervised visual effects on a bunch of the stuff, supervised the model build, did all sorts of stuff. I ended up doing stunts in it. We were just a couple of guys just trying to get something made, and it ended up, being something that people responded to and liked. So it kind of became a proper film when we got Sam Rockwell. Up until that point, we were just a couple of mates. Like, it felt like we were just mucking about at home because it's what we always did. We were always very serious about it, but it still felt like back when no one was listening to us at all. And all of a sudden, we've got some money and we've got a Hollywood actor flying over from New York, and it's like, oh, this is getting good. Anyway, we've got sets down at Shepperton Studios. We're using the soundstage, where some of the sound stages where they shot Alien. So that was really cool. It's like a real pedigree there. It was like, oh, my set that I designed is standing in where the Nostromo was. That stuff's cool. Oh, yeah. Like, you feel that. Yeah, yes, nice. Yeah, you feel that when that's happening. It was a really big deal. Plus, when we were shooting, it was during the writer's strike back in 2007. So nobody else was there. So we had the whole lot to ourselves. So I was like driving up in my car and just parking sideways in front of the loading bays. And it was just great. It's like we had the whole place to ourselves. And we had such a small crew because, we had no money. So, yeah, it was a very sparse thing with Moon. But what happened then was because that was me and Duncan so close, working on the thing so closely, I was everywhere. I was in all the meetings. I was heading up departments. I was doing all that stuff. So, yeah, after Moon, Duncan went off to LA to do source code, and he wanted me to go and production design source code. But I was like really burnt out. I worked on Moon for like 22 months, and I was like, I put everything I got into it because I didn't know if I was going to get to make another sci-fi film. So I put everything I had into that, and I was dead at the end of that. I was skinned. I got paid like £15,000 to work on that for 22 months. I was skinned. I was up to over my head in credit card debt. It was horrible. But I was just burnt out. So I wasn't, and also I just met a girl that I really liked, and I didn't want to rush off to LA. Now she's the mother of my child, so that one worked out quite nice. But yeah, there's a number of reasons why I didn't rush off to LA. So what I did was I took a job in an advertising agency as because I've been doing loads of advertising work with Duncan before, so it's a comfortable place for me to be. So I took a job as a VFX director in an advertising agency, and that led through to me directing commercials. I spent three and a half years in there, and really I was kind of hiding out and keeping my head down. But advertising is great because it gets really busy, but advertising gets busy for like 3 weeks, and then it goes quiet again, like when you've got a job on. So there was quite a lot of quiet time and a lot of downtime. So I was getting after Moon, it felt like everybody and the dog had an idea for a modestly budgeted sci-fi film. And so I had a period of about 2 years, and I got about 60 or 70 scripts through in that period. And I just wasn't buying it. I just didn't like any of them. They just, everybody wanted me to reprise my role I did on Moon on their film. And I was just like, I'm just not feeling it, because I put so much energy into Moon, and I mean, it worked. Like, people responded to it, people saw it, people saw the work that I did, and all that energy and that I put into it wasn't wasted. Like, people saw it and they got it. But that was sweat that put that there. And I just didn't feel it for this other stuff that I was reading. I was like, I don't know, like, I got a job in advertising, it's paying me really well. I don't want to, it's like, I need a really good reason to get back into this lane again. And as it happened, there was a production company, which doesn't exist now, in New York. And they had a film that they wanted me to production design, and it came through as a script. It was actually quite interesting. So I got in a conversation with them, and I felt like the script needed some work. And so there was enough in it to interest me. So I actually said, like, hope you don't mind this, but I'm going to write down some thoughts I have on the material, because it's a first draft, it's going to be changing. Here's what I think you need to do to the script. And I read so much material that I really had a handle on getting to fix things. Whenever I read something, I might not like it, but I can. It goes deeper than that. I can tell you why I don't like it, and then I can suggest why I think it could be improved. And I've just been doing that by habit. So I wrote them this sort of mini essay about things that I felt could improve this film. And it impressed them to the point where they asked me if I would like to direct. And I was like, yeah, I think I would actually. Like, I know exactly what that job is. I've been right there on Moon, and I could totally do that again. So I would actually be quite interested in doing that. So that project went quiet for a bit, and they said, have you got anything that you've been thinking about yourself that you might want to develop? Which was then, oh, you mean, do I want to be a writer-director? Because those two things are quite different. Like, the job as a director over here and the job as a writer-director, these two jobs are different. Like, they're very different. When you think of working as a director, you think, okay, I want to be a director. How do I be a director? It's all about getting noticed, right? It's like, notice me. What do I do? Okay, I'm going to have to go and make a short film, and maybe I'll get in some festivals and win an award, and people will notice me. And then, maybe I'll get some representation, get an agent. I'll keep pushing. I'll do another short film whilst I'm waiting for that, and I'll build it, and that's great. Like, that's worked for loads of people. But a writer-director is when you're creating your own material. Now, this is a trick to it that occurred to me, is if you want to be a director, like, why should anybody listen to you? It's like, they'll listen to you if they like your work. So how does somebody get to even see your work as a director? Well, you're going to have to do a load of directing work. So the trick is how you get a directing portfolio that anyone's going to pay any attention to. That's slow, and it takes a long time, and you've got to be lucky, and you've got to figure it out. It's totally possible. But that wasn't me. Like, I was like, I've done some commercial work and stuff, but I can show you a bunch of like Nokia phones floating in blue space when we launched a bunch of phones back in 2012. But I don't see why that's going to land me a sci-fi film. So looking at it, if I can write some material which has got a really good idea to it, there's your film right there. It's like, here is a film. I will make it for you. We'll make it together. We'll team up. And so when you're working as a writer-director, it puts you in that position where you can bring somebody a project, and it gives you a really good, if you get it right, it gives you a hook right off the beat. You're not just sort of saying, because if you're not doing that and you just want to be a director for hire, you've got to get some material. It's like, where are you going to find that material? It's like, it's possible. People do it all the time, but it's on you to do it. So what are you going to do? You know, you're going to find a book that you like and try and adapt it. Great. How are you going to do that? You know, you've got to option it. Maybe it's already optioned by somebody else. An option is where, you know, you pay somebody a bunch of money and you kind of hold it for like a period of time, usually a year. So like with a book, you might pay like £50,000 and that'll get you a book for a year. And then if you don't get it off the ground in a year, you pay another £50 to re-option it for another 50,000 for another year, or you let it go and you just walk away from it. So you can't just pick a book and make a film about it. You've got to option it first. Almost everything good has already been optioned. The big production companies just option tons of stuff and just hang on to it in the hope that they can get around to it one day. So good luck with that. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe you'll find something. Even if you can, then you need a script. How's that going to work? You know, there's loads of barriers. If you can figure something out yourself and have a good idea and write it, get treatment together, present it, pitch, if you can do that, you're giving yourself a massive advantage, especially if, like me, you want to do genre stuff. Like I want to do sci-fi stuff. I'd quite like to do some horror stuff too, and there's comedy appeals. There's a sci-fi comedy thing I'm working on. But generally speaking, sci-fi is my thing. This is genre stuff. And it happens to tie in with me because it ties in with world building, and I've been doing that for 25 years in the games industry. So world building is second nature to me. So, you know, and being an artist, I can visualize everything. So now I'm a writer too. When I'm coming up with ideas and writing them, I also know what I want them to look like, and it just takes a bit of time to get it all down. And then I can talk to a production company with a whole package. It's like, here's a film, I've had this idea, I've written it down, I've got a treatment, here's a story, here's the characters, here's the character arcs, here's the ride, like the journey of the film, here's a bunch of designs, here's what it's going to look like. That's what people want. Like, people want things brought to them, you know, bring it to them. You know, they don't want you just knocking on the door saying, hi, I'm a director. Pardon?
What's like a one-stop shop?
The more you can be, the better. You're just helping yourself out. So if there's any skills that you've got, you want to be a director, if there's any skills you've got that add to you as a package that you can bring to it, make sure people know about them, make sure people hear about them. Because the more you can do with that, the better your chances are. Excuse me. So, yeah, where was I with my career trajectory? Oh, yeah, basically backwards and forwards. I had the idea for Archive over an unfortunate weekend. And that then led to me getting Archive together. The production company that I was working with those guys, that ended up, they ended up wanting to make Archive a bigger film than it was. So I parted ways with those guys because they wanted to make it from a $5 million film into like a $60, $70 million film. And I couldn't see myself staying on as a director at that point. They'd need to bring on somebody more senior. So I would lose the project. It's just bound to happen. And I'd have to change a lot of things because I'd got the story down and it would all have to change to make, you know, they wanted a bit of action, like more locations and stuff. And I was just like, I've got this story tight. Like, it's designed to be a small story. It's going to break if I start trying to widen it out. So I pulled it away from those guys and found it another home quite quickly, which was fortunate because when we were doing Moon, we took Moon to a production company called Independent here in London to see if they wanted to produce it and finance it, and they passed on it. So we went and we made the film, and then we took it back to them once we finished it, and they bought it and sold it on and made a ton of money off it. So what was happening was, at the time, the guy who ended up becoming the producer on Archive, one of my best friends, Philip Hurd, he was in contact with another one of my best friends, Adam Biskupski, who's an editor, who became the editor on Archive. They knew each other because they'd done a couple of films together, worked on a Lynn Ramsey film called We Need to Talk About Kevin. And so Philip knew Adam and trusted his brain. And Philip asked Adam out for a dinner. And then Adam said, yeah, cool, what's happening? And Philip was like, well, I'm getting a load of trusted brains together to have a brainstorming session because we want to make a film like Moon, but we want to make it ourselves this time. And Adam said, you don't need to do that. You just need to talk to my friend Gavin. Swap numbers, put us together, went to the pub, had a chat, and then Archive had a new home. And then one thing leads to another, and that's how the film got made.
Wonderful. We only have like 10 or 15 minutes left, so let's talk a little bit about Archive and what's the story behind it. I'm always a little bit reluctant to spoil too much about the film because I really want people to watch it. So I don't want to go into too much details, but like try to tell us a little bit about it without giving away too much.
Okay, I can explain it here because Archive began when I found a robot head in my garden, and it was functional, and I was able to boot it up. There's like a USB connection on the back, and it actually worked with my computer. So I was able to activate this robot head and interrogate it. Joking, of course. This is a prosthetic from Stacey Martin. This was on a stunt dummy. This is makeup that was on Stacey, but we ended up needing a stunt dummy. So it's got a polystyrene head, like a mold of her head in there. CNC from polystyrene, and when we were using the stunt dummy, the head fell off, so I just picked it up and brought it home. The original inspiration for, sorry, I should be specific. What is there any specific part of Archive you'd like me to talk about?
Well, okay, let's one thing that I find really interesting is because there are many films that deal with AI in some form, but most of the time, they're not really dealing with AI. For example, RoboCop is not about AI, it's about Reaganomics. And Ex Machina is more about toxic masculinity than about AI. So there's always a message being delivered through the medium of sci-fi or through dealing with artificial intelligence. So what would you say is your message? What's the embedded message in Archive?
I wasn't really interested in a message, to be honest. I'm more interested in themes. So I really wasn't, I like films as entertainment, and I'm more interested in themes than direct messages. So the themes that I wanted to explore were love and death, because those are the two kind of great universal constants, like human constants. Like whoever you are, whatever your life story is, you will have experience with love and death, like you just will, in some form or another. And so I wanted to, when I was setting out to get the story together for Archive, I wanted to write a story that was based around those themes, with the idea being that everybody would be able to get some kind of a register on it, hopefully. So, because there are a lot of sci-fi films that have got themes and stakes that are kind of a bit out of reach, like, Transformers movies. They're great. Like I can eat popcorn all day and watch the Transformers movies. But if you watch Transformers 2, like the stakes in that film that you have to buy into are, you've got Shia LaBeouf's going out with Megan Fox. His best friend's a robot from space, sports car, and he's trying to stop some other robots from space blowing up the moon. Like that's not my day. That's not my life. Like So I wanted to get into stuff that was a bit more. Accessible is not the right word, but I like sci-fi where you can take some aspect of the human condition and shine it through a lens and take it off into a bizarre new place. So that's what I was doing with the whole. I mean, it's kind of. I was taking a bit of inspiration from the kind of Greek classics with, like, Perseus or Theseus, who went to the underworld. I can't remember, all those kind of. God, I'm embarrassing myself now with my lack of knowledge of Greek classics. You know what I'm talking about, though, the ancient fables.
Yeah.
That was the driving force behind it. But one of the things that I was most interested in with the AI, they're often portrayed as being superior to people and like super strong, and ultimately there's going to be some kind of a conflict and the machines will replace the people. These are the kind of tropes that we just get. And I really love the idea of the AI being vulnerable. I mean, I'm really talking about J2's story arc here. For anyone who's seen the film, they'll know what I'm talking about. But I love the idea of I love the idea of an AI being vulnerable. And what happened quite often when you create a work of art on any scale, no matter what it is you do, whether you're a sculptor with a massive block of marble and it takes you 5 years to make your sculpture, or whatever it is, whatever you're doing, if you're doing a piece of art and it takes a long time, what I found is that things come out, like other things like manifest. So, Archive took me quite a long time to put together. And what I didn't notice this until I was watching a close to final VFX edit, like we nearly finished the film. And I set out to write a film about love and death. And what I'd actually done is written a film about replacement. And that was something that manifests itself through me dealing with love and death. The thing that was actually going on there was replacement. And it sort of occurred to me that, like, maybe that's the real fear that we all have.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting why I'm good.
Absolutely. Like I have to say, like I really, really enjoyed it, and I watched a lot of sci-fi, and like there's so many films out there where like half the way through the film you have the feeling of like this like bad form of deja vu, because I mean many genre films use the same tropes or use the same story arcs, but sometimes it just like works well and you like to see the same story again, and sometimes you just like have the feeling of like why I'm even watching this. It's just like it's a
Oh,
bad
but
copy of
also,
a bad copy, and
also,
I really enjoyed your film.
thank you. I mean, I'm the same. I'm a fan. First and foremost, I'm a fan, and you know, we're all like an audience now is more visually and audially sophisticated than they ever have been. Like an informed audience member now has seen so much stuff, and they know so much about what goes on and how things get made, consumed so much media, listened to so much music, had their emotions like manipulated so many times by like films and storytelling and filmmaking that I think audiences are quite tough now. And on top of that, there's the aspect of time where there's so much media out there that it seems like, especially with streaming, like the real currency that you're asking for people to watch your film these days is time. It's to give up their time to watch the film. And one of the big kind of things I have with myself is like a kind of a deal I have with myself is I'm just trying as hard as I can to not waste anybody's time. And part of that involves not doing anything that somebody's seen before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like in the nerd world or sci-fi world, there is a strange form of like attention economy going on. You're absolutely right about that. That
Yeah,
there's so much stuff out there. Like who wants to waste or invest, let's say, to be neutral, like another like 15 I don't know hours of their time into another sci-fi series, let's say. What is
yeah.
the good thing about it? Why would you do that? Yeah.
Even just a movie, like we all go to work, we all work hard, we all come back at the end of the day and make ourselves a meal. Maybe you've got a couple of hours of chill time in the evening. It's like if you're going to commit that to a film, it better be good, right? I feel like this. I'm like, I'll watch a film, but it better be good, because if you watch one and it's not good, you feel ripped off. You feel like you've had
Yeah,
your relaxation time ripped off.
absolutely. Just because I'm so interested in filmmaking as like active, very creative problem solving, because I know that from my work. My last question for you would be, what was the moment, or what was the thing happening creating Archive, where you were at that point saying like, oh fuck, I really at the moment I really don't know how to solve this. Was there a moment of like of really a problem in the process that you really had to get very creative to solve it?
No,
No?
no.
Good. It means
Yeah,
you have really
honestly,
well planned.
honestly, it's like we did so much preparation. My big, I think I can explain this a little bit with every now and again I'll have dreams where I'm shooting, and I'll wake up and I'm always super stressed, and I always feel I have like bad night's sleep. And my girlfriend, she finds this hilarious. And she said to me one time, she's like, "Why are you always so miserable and grumpy when you wake up after you've had a dream about shooting a film?" And she says, like, "I would have thought you would have loved that. Like, you're on set, you're making a film. Isn't that like the best dream ever?" And I said to her, "It's an absolute nightmare, because in my dream, I don't know what's going on. There's all this weird dream stuff. It's like some of it's like the thing that I'm thinking about, in real life, but a lot of it's just weird, and I'm wandering around and I don't know what's going on, and I don't know what the schedule is. I don't know who these people are." And that is like the worst nightmare, like being on set. Well, I mean, I've never had it happen to me, but I've only had it exist in nightmares. But I will never have that happen to me, because that would be my worst nightmare. And I mean, I've got to presume this is pretty typical. I mean, so much of directing is getting ready to direct, and like when you're on set, things happen, things pop up, but they're usually on the smaller side of things. And I like to be able to like focus on the actors when we're on set and be there for them and talk to them. I mean, you've always got everything locked down, but sometimes these conversations pop up where someone's got ideas about things, and you just get into these conversations, and that's the stuff on set that gets really juicy for me. But I'm never on set and thinking, how's this bit of visual effects going to work, or how's that robot going to look real, or what, how are we going to replace that background or track that thing, or I don't ever have any of that. I did have one little bit where we got let down by the art department, and I had a key scene and some props weren't there, so we had to film it without them and VFX them in. And that it was the bit at the end, the download head arm. Sorry, a bit of spoiler stuff going on here. There's a robot arm at the end in the final sequence of the film that plays quite an important role. It moves around quite a bit. That was meant to be a physical prop, and it just never got built. And I was always assured it's like, it'll be ready tomorrow, it'll be ready tomorrow, it'll be ready tomorrow. It never was. So we had to shoot that with nothing there. And that was the closest thing I had. But I mean, it wasn't difficult to do, I'm looking at everything else that's going on and all the things that have had to come together to get to that point. I know VFX. I know how this stuff's going to work. I can make sure I've captured the HDRI lighting data. That stuff's easy. Like I can kind of be a bit loosey-goosey with that kind of stuff in the moment if I have to. And that was one time where I did have to. But apart from that, everything was. I mean, it wasn't like it was on rails, because on the way into the shoot, you've got your schedule, everything's down, you know where you're going to be, you're moving around, you know what you're shooting on what day, which actors you're working with, what costumes you need, what props you need. That was a little bit of a thing with the props, but most of it was fine. Whether you need to close a road and drive a car, you don't have any of that. You're not solving these problems in the moment. This stuff's all done in advance. Philip Hurd, my producer, Cora Palfrey too, fantastic. I had a great production team behind me. And everybody was really straight shooting. So, there was a couple of things. There was one thing I had to do. There's a bit at the end where some doors, some people cut through some doors. And originally I wanted it to be like Aliens. At the beginning of Aliens, when I wanted that. Yeah. That looks awesome. So it was always designed to be that. And there are 3 doors in the archive set, and each one of the big doors, each one of those doors weighs a ton, like 1 actual ton. And they were operated by people pulling the levers they're running on rails. So those were just people pulling them, but each door weighed a ton. And we were supposed to have stunt doors built that could be cut and this and that and the other. And I was very clear about what I wanted right at the beginning. It's like I knew exactly what I told everybody what I wanted. And we were all the way in, very clear, nothing changed. And then we got to a couple of days out from shooting it, and then they told me that they couldn't do it. And I was like, what do you mean we can't do it? And they were like, well, the whole set's made of wood, it'll be a fire risk. And I was like, well, yeah, but you told me that the wood had been treated, and, there's ways to do this stuff. And why are you telling me this now? Sorry, my dog's having a little bark. Yeah, so I was hearing all this stuff in a production meeting, but I'd already designed in, because I knew this was going to happen. Just out of paranoia, I was expecting it, just because it would have been bad. And so I designed in some bits in the doors that had these bolts that could be cut inside these little recesses. And so I pulled together a production meeting and got everybody in a room and just basically made everybody tell me why it couldn't work, just to be completely sure. And then once they'd all finished, it was like, okay, then we'll just cut these things and it's done, moving on. And it was funny because afterwards I found out they all thought that, that was going to be something that was going to like really upset me and freak me out. But I'd already figured out a plan B. I just hadn't told them about it because they didn't need to know, because I wanted plan A. If I told them plan B on day 1, they would have just gone for that in the first place. So I had to push for plan A. And it was only when that couldn't physically be a thing we went for plan B. But it was fine. So I think those are probably about the best examples, but they didn't derail anything. It wasn't a drama or a problem. We didn't have any accidents. When we were shooting Moon, Duncan had an accident and put himself in hospital he had to get rushed off. We had to call an ambulance. And I ended up directing Moon whilst he was in the hospital getting looked after. Those kind of things they can be a bit weird. We didn't have any accidents though. It was pretty smooth sailing with Archive.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We are already over time. I would love to chat for another hour with you, but that's not possible. So thank you so much. Maybe just a brief information from you, where people will actually be able to see your film in, the height year of 2020 and movie releases.
Yeah. I don't have precise dates for the European launch, but Archive has been sold to all territories. So wherever you are in the world, Archive will be coming to you. Different companies buy different territories, and each have their own release strategies. So there are some places where it's available in theatres, and there are, I don't have information on who's doing what where. Some places are going theatrical, but ultimately it'll be available online everywhere, no matter what. But it is coming out everywhere. I would say the theatrical experience would be the better way to see the film, because Stephen Price's score is just between the combination of Laurie Rose's cinematography and Stephen Price's score, the cinema is going to be the thing. But regardless, we've all got like 55-inch, whatever, 75-inch TVs in our houses now, and surround sound. So wherever you watch it, if you watch Archive, I hope you enjoy it. It was made with love. It nearly killed me, but it didn't. And I survived. And a lot of people worked very hard to make that film, hopefully something that can kind of stand on its own in the sci-fi canon. So if you like robots, you like vintage sports cars, you like hot robot engineers in jumpsuits, go check it out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Good luck with your upcoming projects. Hopefully they will be coming. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully our paths will cross again in the not too distant future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.